Hey folks, thanks for tuning in again. Here we are back again with Mike Fraser, mix engineer. And if you haven't heard the first half of the interview, go back to the episode right before this. Mike's got so much great stuff to share with us, a lifetime in the music industry and truly working his way up literally from being a janitor, like in the recording studio at Little Mountain Sound, to being a world-class mix engineer. He's done 6 AC/DC records. He's done a million other things. If you look at his bio, he's like top notch. So if you haven't heard the rest of it, go back and listen to the first half of the interview. But with no further ado, let's get you going on the second half. Some of the favorite projects that you've worked on, what are the things that have made them favorite projects?
Yeah, well, there's been a few great projects, and for me, it's personalities.
Yeah.
When you've got a great bunch of people that when you first meet them, they feel like you've known them for 100 years already. So all your personalities just sort of gel right away. And so you just have such a laugh that sometimes you think, oh, okay, I guess we better get some work done today because you're laughing, joking, goofing around. I had one band that they actually got me golfing, but we all golf a lot. So we were scheduling our sessions around golf. So we'd, tee off at 8 o'clock. It's usually about a 4-hour round. So we'd have a bit of lunch and then go to work at 1 or 2, and then not work too late so that we could get up the next morning and golf at 8. So that was a lot of fun. And we found we got a lot done because you'd come in relaxed. You weren't burnt out. We would stay there till 2, 3 in the morning, working hard and getting tired and wearing yourself out. So that was a good, fun project. I've done a few records with those guys, and we would travel a lot. They're from England, so we did a lot of records there. So we'd play a lot of English courses. Then they came to North America. We did a record down in Atlanta, so we had golfed all the golf courses down there. And, it's just really fun things. There can be fun parts of this business too, Yeah. The travel, done records in Ibiza, over in Spain. And
yeah.
That was, yeah. Ibiza, yeah, and it's just some of the travel. Some of a lot of the studios are residential, so they're on a big property or in a big sort of mansion with a studio, so you all kind of live there, and water down, and they have a cook making meals for you, and there's some really great times. It's not necessarily all 14-hour days sitting there listening to music, so that's the fun part about it. And then you get to be creative and do music at the same time. So, yeah, like I say, sometimes it's a bit of a lifestyle, and you got to make it fun.
Bit of a journey going from sleeping in the loading bay an hour a night in a sleeping bag to getting to record in Ibiza and mansions with a cook, right?
And then I had a closet. And then Ibiza, I had a closet with a sleeping bag just so
just to keep it real.
Just to keep it real.
So on the flip side of, there's some things that have gone into projects that were super fun.
Yeah.
If you want to talk a little bit about contributing factors to projects that have been a total slog or ones that ended up where you kind of maybe wished you hadn't taken them on to begin with. Again, you don't have to name any names. We're just talking about process.
Yeah. You know what? I've been very, very lucky in, most of the people I've worked with have been pretty amazing. I find some of the hardest egos to work with are sometimes the younger bands, especially ones that maybe have had a song on the radio and come in and they've got these chips on their shoulder and you can't tell them anything because they know what they're doing. Okay, fine. So sometimes they're difficult to work with, and that it takes a lot more work to kind of either earn their trust or their respect or, say, look, I'm not trying to knock the chip off your shoulder, but when we're in here working, like, leave the egos at the door. We're all in the same place. We're all trying for the same thing. Don't give me your rock star attitude. Yeah. It doesn't work here. The bigger guys have got rid of all that, and they're like some of the sweetest people ever. Yeah. So So I've been pretty lucky. You know, I've had some records. There was one record, I think it was a year and 2 months it took us to do. So that was a bit of a slog. I mean, it was a fun record. It was a good record, but
a long record.
Long one. Yeah. We went to Miami and did overdubs for 9 months.
That's a lot of overdubs.
Part of that was we only worked 3 to 4 hours a day, 5 days a week, and took weekends off. So they wanted to just kind of take their time in a nice warm place, and so away they went. But, you know, here I am in Miami. I'm a workaholic and weekends off, and I'm not a sun and beach guy. You know, I just grew up in studios, so sun and beach, I'm hiding. So, you know, I just had to try and stay out of the bars on the weekend.
Yeah.
It's the only place I want to go. Air conditioning and beer, I'm in.
Yeah.
You know? So that one was a bit of a slog, you know, if there was a slog. And then every record always has its ups and down points. You know, some days are harder than others, especially when you get towards the end of the record. Everybody's getting a little bit worn out and burnt out. Nerves get a little more frayed. And then the pressure of, are we going to get it done in time? We're running, you know, low on the budget now. We're running a little bit over time on days, you know, so it could get a little tense. So those are sometimes tough to ride out, but, you know, you got to get through it.
Yeah. So as we've established, we have listeners who've maybe never worked with a producer or mixer, or maybe even hired an engineer before. So in the spirit of pulling back that curtain and making expectations clear for emerging artists, can you talk about how you structure your rates? And we don't necessarily have to talk dollars, but more about sort of the general principles. Is it hourly versus day rate versus song versus project? Is it always the same? Does it differ from project to project? But what should an artist expect when they decide to hire those roles?
Right. Yeah. Well, I can only speak for myself, and I'm not sure how anybody else does it. You know, because this comes up a lot. You know, I get an email through my website, or somebody just emails me and says, "Hey, what's your rate? You know, I've got 2 songs. What's your rate?" I'm like, okay, what do you got?
Yeah.
Because I could give you my book rate, and you'll have a heart attack. Or I could say, I would like to get this, and you might say, "Oh, that's way too expensive." Or you just tell me what you have, and then I will tell you, saying, "Okay, well, the studios are going to be X amount of dollars, and then I'm an X amount of dollars." I don't own my own studio, so the studio always gets paid separate, and I get paid separate. So that's what it's going to cost you. So if you've got, you know, let's just do it in dollars. If you got $10, and the studio wants, you know, $10 for a day, and the studio wants $5 a day, and I'd like to get $3 a day, you know, we could get it done if you got $10. But, you know, if the studio's $20 a day and I want to get 15 a day, we're not going to do it for your $10. Right. So there's a lot of ways of working it out. You know, sometimes I'll say, okay, then let's go into the studio for an hour and do your drums, and then go somewhere else. Understand you're not going to sound like the records on the radio, because they go in with, you know, a decent budget, and we spend some time on those. So, you know, you're going to get what you pay for, but I'm going to give you 100%, you know? So it's really time. And most of my rates are per song. Like if I'm mixing, it's per song, and I make a song a day. Sometimes if it's a very small track list, like, you know, 16 tracks or less, I can mix 2 songs in one day, and I'd still only charge them for a day. So that kind of helps their budget out. So there's a lot of ways of trying to work within their budget. Sometimes I'll take a lot less money, and I'll get production points. So production points you get a percentage of sales. I still do that, but, you know, nowadays records don't sell. You don't get anything streaming. I'm always making any money on streaming. So I could ask, you know, for 10% on a record. 10% of nothing's still nothing. So, you know, I'll still do that out of sort of principle in case something hits, or sometimes it gets into a movie soundtrack or something. You'll make some money off that, but there's no money in royalties anymore, or very little. You know, it's all streaming, and we're not making the money off streaming. But sometimes they'll do that, reduce the monetary rate for a percentage or a cut of the record of sales. And then I know some, I don't know about engineers, but management and all that started this thing called the 360 deal, where they'll get a percentage of everything, and I don't think that's fair. Sales, great. Management get percentage of the door of the band. Okay, great, but don't start dipping into T-shirts and all the side stuff that the band can do themselves. I don't think that's fair. They get a cut of that. It's gouging to me. Like, musicians have to get some of it back.
I totally agree with you, and unfortunately, it is a reality if you're working with the major labels.
Yeah.
So you definitely, as a new artist, you got to know what you're signing your name to, because you don't want that surprise later. So
But getting back to sort of your original question, I like to try and get a day rate is what I charge. I try and make it fair for the band. And there's some bands where they'll go, okay, let's do this. And, my grandmother's going to lend me some money or whatever. And I'll go, no. Yeah. I'm not taking grandmother's money because, I already know listening to their song. It's like, okay, you're not going to make it back.
Yeah.
It's not going to light the world on fire. I love being involved, but I'm not taking that money. Yeah. So I'll be fair with them, and I hate gougers. But when you're looking at other people, and again, I don't know how they structure it, but be very clear with what they're expected to be paid for how long. I've heard horror stories of going into the studio and then after 8 hours, the guy's charging overtime. And then even if you're not done, he wants more money to then finish it off. So just be really clear. You could get into a point of, say like a bad car mechanic where you go in to have a set of brakes done and, now he's also charged you for this and charged you for that. So just be clear. What am I paying you and what do we get back?
Clarity is king.
Yeah.
And do you typically get hired by the artist or the label? If it's a label signed artist?
You know what? For the last bunch of years, it's mostly been artists. And sometimes they'll have a deal and I'll be paid through the label, but everything's just kind of done through the artist and management, artist management and that. The labels just sort of write the checks now, but everything's done through the management.
Do you want
to? There's a lot of independent artists out there right now too that aren't signed, so that's a lot of my work too. So again, that's why I have this sort of my sliding scale rate. I'll do whatever I can to make it work.
Well, I think now that like anybody can upload a song to Apple Music or Spotify, you don't have to be signed to a major label to get your record in the record store. You know what I mean? Like the whole landscape has changed. So everybody can record at home on GarageBand and upload something to Apple Music. That doesn't mean it's going to sound good and be a hit, but the possibility exists. So there are a lot more independent artists who are able to enter the fray at different levels. Like you say, sometimes they are spending some money and working with guys like you, and then they can do parts of it themselves. And sometimes they're doing more of it themselves.
Yeah. Well, I've found even sort of established, sort of small mid-range bands, even if they have a label, are doing a lot of it themselves, which becomes frustrating because they sign so much of their percentage away to these labels, and then all of a sudden they're booking their own shows and they're not getting any tour support, so they're paying all their gas and all this, and then any of the money that comes in, the label gets the biggest chunk of it. So it's sort of frustrating, or labels won't sign a band until they're got, I don't know, 200,000 hits on their website. Well, how are they supposed to do that on their own? Like, that's what you need a label for, to help them get out there. So it's a funny circle right now. And I think that's why there's a lot more bands kind of doing it independent. and smaller labels popping up here, little boutique kind of labels that'll help getting it done. But yeah, there's a lot more sort of bands just doing it themselves.
Yeah. Yeah. You want to talk a little bit about, I mean, you talked a little bit about it before, but if there's anything more to add, what happens in pre-production versus studio time versus post-production, mixing and mastering, like how those different things Lego together.
Yeah. Well, you know, in pre-production, usually anytime I've done it anyways, it's in the band's rehearsal place. And a lot of bands sort of, you know, have a monthly rent, you know, instead of having to, we've got to book the day at the rehearsal place, but they have a set place they book out for months. So you could go in there, you know, basically dirt cheap and spend hours in there. So in pre-production, instead of playing through the whole song, sometimes you'll just work on the chorus. Okay, yeah, no, I like that. Oh, well, let's change the drums up a bit there. Okay, count off, play the chorus. Ding, 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 ding. No, that did stop. That didn't work. So there's a lot of start, stops, and you work on little pieces of the song that need some polish or need some work. And then sometimes we'll just play that part over and over and over again. Okay, now let's try the whole song again. Okay, no, that's not working. So you know, all day or even for 3 days, you'll kind of work on one song for hours and take little breaks and whatever, but for hours. Whereas in the studio, if you're doing that in the studio, you know, in the studio, you can get a block out, 12-hour block out, but basically you're paying per hour, you know, so every hour that you're in there, the clock's ticking. So, you know, that can add up pretty fast. So if you spend 3 days working out how you want to play this song, you know, that's 36 hours, say it's $100 an hour, you know, there's almost $4,000 you spent and you haven't even recorded the song yet. So, so pre-pro, it's really important that's where you spend your time, work out your bits. You know, even if you want to get in to start working out harmonies that you want to sing, you know, because that's a lot of part, you know, you get into the studio, get everything done, the vocal song is, okay, let's put some harmonies on the thing. Well, then everybody's sitting there at the piano trying to work out harmonies. And then, you know, and if you're not good at it or don't do it a lot, that's time consuming. So you're better off doing that at the rehearsal place. So that's the rehearsal. When you get into the studio, because time is so expensive and time is of the essence, and plus, you know, a lot of bands call it red light fever. As soon as they get in the studio, they sort of get all nervous. And so, you know, you got to try and get everybody, okay, lighten up, you know, turn down the lights. Let's put up some candles. Let's, you know, kind of make it more comfortable. Once you're through that, you know, it's down to you want to just get the best performances you can as quickly as you can. And, you know, try not to worry too much about quickly, but just relax and let's get the best performances we can. So if you're well prepared in the pre-pro stage, that's easier in the studio. And you want to get in and out as quick as you can just for money reasons, you know. Then after everything's recorded and all done, I get it to mix, and like I say, it's usually a song a day. It takes me to mix a song, and after that, then it goes to mastering. After that, so mastering takes each song and makes them all flow together on a record. So when I mixed one song, maybe that day it ended up sounding a little bit duller than the next song. Maybe one song has more sort of bright sounding instruments. You want that record to sound like it's all
cohesive
from the same. Not all sound the same, but you know, it's got to flow nicely together. So that's mostly what mastering does. It adds a little bit more compression, which sort of holds the volume of the music in a certain place, and it makes all the songs kind of the same volume, so they flow together. So that's mastering. Yep. And sort of the whole process.
Yeah. In the recording process, when you've worked as in the position of being either the recording engineer or the producer, because I've talked to students about this when they're quite nervous about going into the studio, and I've said, if being in the studio and like turning out the lights and having some candles going, or like taking 5 minutes and throwing up a string of fairy lights or a scarf or whatever, if that is going to make you comfortable and get a better performance out of you, the producer and the engineer are not going to look twice because they've seen it a million times before, and they are more interested in you getting the best performance than thinking you're weird because you want to light some incense. Am I correct in that perception?
For sure. And for many years, though I've stopped doing it because the collection just got crazy, but people started giving me skull stuff, skull flags, and ceramic skulls, and so it was taking a whole day to set the studio up and then a whole day to tear it down, and I was starting getting the bill from the studio, so I stopped doing it. But it made the whole place, instead of look like the sterile, like, oh my God, look at all this gear and bright lights and all, it made it look more like a clubhouse, right? So that would really sort of, people would start putting their feet up in the furniture and relaxing, so that, that was great. Another trick I would do is sometimes, especially if you're in there for a few days, say, okay, so tomorrow is Surrey Trucker Day, so we all got to dress up as Surrey truckers, your hat, your denims, and whatever you got to do, or have a theme wear day, a Christmas sweater day, or whatever, and it just something to look forward to. They all come in their various things, and it just lights, so you're not thinking like, I hope you play in tune today, because it's too intimidating. You've got to try and diffuse it as much as you can. You know?
Yeah, I think that piece around making it comfortable, even for veterans, but especially for people that are new and aren't used to what it's like to be in that environment. Just it's a little bit of the permission. Right? Knowing that it's okay to do the things that are going to make you feel more comfortable, because in the end, it's going to show up in a better performance, and that's everybody's end goal.
Yeah. So if you're used to, practicing your instrument in your bedroom for years and all that, and you're comfortable in your little bedroom and all that, okay, well then maybe we'll stick you in this little room with a little bed and a table lamp, and just pretend you're in your bedroom then, because that's where you need to be. If that's where you play the best, then you go in there and do it,
Exactly.
You don't need to stand out here with the spotlight on you and everybody watching you, so whatever it's going to take.
Yeah, exactly. What have been some of your favorite studios to record in? Like, I mean, everybody talks about back in the heyday recording drums in the loading bay at Little Mountain, right? And that's gone now, but it is and it isn't.
It's there, but it's not. You can't use the loading bay anymore. Yeah. I mean, because I was sort of brought up here and cut my teeth here, Little Mountain's always going to hold a very special place in my heart. But to be all honest, like, the memory of it and the legendary status of it is really, it was a lot of work working out of there. We didn't have very much gear. I know Bob and I, when we'd be working and we're trying to match our records to other records that have been out and all that. And when you first started traveling and say go down to work in a studio in LA, you go in and go, oh, you have all this stuff? You were using all that gear?
Your studio was maintained?
Well, ours was maintained. We had some great maintenance guys, but they had all the greatest microphones, these old great tube mics and tube compressors and just all this great gear that we're like, what? So we're making our records sound like their records with not much, many tools.
Spit and duct tape.
So it made us work harder. Yeah. So, that was one great thing that why a lot of people that came sort of through Little Mountain and stuff has had quite good successes, because we had to work really hard for it. But I've been really lucky on that we've had the warehouse and the armory is sort of the two. There's Hipposonic, which is kind of the old Little Mountain, the B. They're running there. They're good. Well, there's a lot of great little studios in Vancouver, but those are sort of the three main ones I work out of. you know, a lot of the big studios in LA have always been a great trip. I've always loved working over in England, and mostly in London. It's just such a great culture over there. They've got some great studios. Abbey Road, you know, worked there a whole bunch. So that's pretty cool with all the sort of the Beatle vibe there, and the room where they did Dark Side of the Moon, Pink Floyd, you know, just all that kind of stuff. It's just sort of dripping with history, you know, that's all pretty cool. And then I get some of the exotic trips, like I say, to like, you know, Ibiza and where else have I gone? A lot of other places in the States, and never done the Bahamas. Everybody says, oh, we should do a record in the Bahamas. And I'm thinking, well, the only thing with that is like, while I'm doing all the work in the control room, you guys are all hanging out on the beach. So, yeah, I don't like that idea.
Well, but lucky for you, you don't like the beach anyway, so.
Oh, there you got that. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, there's some cool places, and I think it's a great hallmark in your career when you get to move outside of your own city to start working in these other places that hold so much history and you know, like you say, the Beatles and Pink Floyd and all of that stuff. There is so much history there. It's got to be inspiring to work in those places, if nothing else.
Yeah, it is. And you know what I've found, and also this works great for bands too, is when you're working outside of your home studio kind of thing, it takes you out of your comfort zone too. So it makes you kind of work harder, or you're a little bit more on edge, you're a little edgier as opposed to just all comfort. And, you know, for me, it works great with bands, you know, if they're from Toronto, well, come out here and do a record, because then you're not going to be disturbed by friends' phone calls and all of just normal stuff that happen at home. You're here, you're living in a hotel room, so all you want to do is get out of there and into the studio and work. So sometimes it works great. If the money's there, you know, it's expensive to fly a whole band and do a record in a different city with hotels and all that. But, you know, it's a great way of, you know, just getting out of the comfort zone. Or I remember, you know, with Bob Rock's band, he had a band called the Paolas. So we used to go over to Salt Spring Island, this little home studio over there, to just do a writing, what do you call that? A writing session or whatever. So we'd go over there for 2 or 3 days in this cheap little thing, and we just had fun drinking beer, and they'd be writing and all that. So, you know, just to get out of your comfort zone for a little bit, you know, it doesn't have to be across the continent or overseas, but, you know, just go somewhere different and different environment. It can be cool too.
Yeah. Recording. There's so much gear out there, and it does so many different things. Do you have any, and I know this is a very vast question, so take it as you will. Yeah. Do you have any favorite pieces of gear?
Well, for me, because I'm sort of an old school guy, I like the analog tape machine. Yep. So analog tape was basically a piece of tape, 2 inches, and it has 24 tracks on it, and that's it. All you get is 24 tracks. And on a reel of tape, you would get 15 minutes of music. So that's how we used to do all the records back in the days on analog tape. For me, just the sound of it for rock music anyways is unbeatable. It just has this great sound, just the way it slightly compresses things. The bottom end's really nice, the top's silky. But it does, there's a lot of hiss on there, and, you know, we forget about that. We've got into now more digital recording and Pro Tools specifically. And
let's just for a moment talk about how you have to make edits when you're recording to tape.
Oh, yeah. Well, we're recording to tape. You had to sort of mark the kick drum or the snare drum, and with a China pencil do a little mark, and then find the other one, and then put those pieces together and cut it with a razor blade and hope that you got it right. There was no going back, you know. But, you know, with analog tape, too, there's a lot of hiss. So now sometimes we'll go back to say, oh, I want to do this record on analog. Okay, great. We'd love to. Oh, what's all that noise? It's like, well, that's tape noise. I forgot that we hated that back in the day. So, you know, and Pro Tools has made things a lot easier. But again, in the digital world, because you can edit the drums so easy and quantize things and auto-tune, people use it more as a crutch now instead of a tool.
Yeah.
You know, when we all started using it, it was a tool because you couldn't do things like that easily on analog tape. Oh, now we can do that. This is great. But then you started just doing it all the time because you could, you know. So there's been certain things lost. But my favorite gear is analog for sure. It's just for rock music. It's just got that certain sound. And then when I'm recording a band for drums and guitars, I like to record on a Neve board. Mm-hmm. It's a type of board that just seems to sound great on guitars and drums. But then when I mix on a solid state Logic. It's called an SSL, and that just has, to me, that nice kind of clear, punchy thing to. So those are sort of my favorite thing: analog machine, Neve, and SSL.
Yep.
Perfect. Yeah.
Love it. Well, is there anything else that you think is really important for up and coming artists to know in this world?
You know what? I think one thing, and I know of like one of the schools here in Vancouver, Nimbus, they've branched off or got courses, but go get business course.
Yeah.
Take a business course or a course on law or something. You don't have to become a lawyer, but take courses on that, how to do your own accounting, how to, you know, what to read in a contract. And, you know, we all send it to our lawyers, but it's really good when you get it back. You read it before you sign it. You read everything. If you don't understand, what does that mean? Ask your lawyer. But if you have some working knowledge of what that is, you can read some of the stuff that's all of a sudden they try and slide in and say, wait a minute, what's this saying now? It sounds like it's saying this, you know. Take charge of your own life and don't leave it up to your lawyer, your accountant, and all that. Like, you know what's going on. It's your ship to drive. So don't have anybody tell you, oh yeah, no, just sign it. That's fine.
Yeah.
No, you read it and understand what it is there, because you can be signing a lot away for a lot of years and you don't even know.
For sure. With contracts, you like absolutely, and don't ever, I mean, I 100% agree with you. You need to be able to read it and understand what you're reading. And if you are signing a contract, you also need to be having a lawyer look over it who is purely and simply working for you and doesn't have an interest in the other party. But I think the piece around artists actually being business entities, because they are, is one that is not talked about a lot. And the fact that as artists, whatever element of the business you're in, whether you are like the artist, whether you're the engineer, whether you're the video director, whether you're the photographer, all the people that intersect in this business, we are all our own businesses.
Yeah.
And we need the skills. We don't have to have all the skills, but we need to be able to read a balance sheet, read a profit and loss statement. We need to understand the basics of business and understand that we actually are in business for ourselves, and we can't just hand that off to everybody else, because that's how you get screwed.
Yeah, that's how you get ripped off. You just leave yourself wide open. Even if you're working with somebody that had great intentions and all that, sometimes the temptation's too great. They say, "Oh, I could skim a little bit off here and a little bit off here," and or contracts are the worst thing, because you'll have an agreement, you sort of go back for it. Okay, that's good. They send you the signing papers, and I've had them come in. It's supposed to be exactly what you just finished agreeing, but they're clean signing papers. And just sign page 12, and then I'll go to sign. Well, so I'll just take another skim. Wait a minute, what's this paragraph 9? There was no paragraph 9 before. My lawyer looked at it. Oh, no, that. So we've caught people doing that before. But I've caught it, because my lawyer, well, he should have caught it too. But, read it yourself, because you're responsible for you, not anybody else,
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for your time today, Mike. I really appreciate you joining me. Where can people find you? On the web, social media, all of those kind of things?
Yeah, my website is www.mikefrasermix.com. Fraser's like the Fraser Valley here, or Fraser. It's not like the U.S. Fraser. MikeFraserMix.com. I know I'm on Facebook. I don't know how you search that, though. It could be Fraser Productions on Facebook, maybe.
We'll link it in the show notes. You can send it to me, and I'll put it in the show notes.
Okay. Yeah. I've got a personal one on Facebook, too, but I can't add any more friends on there. They always limit you.
You're a very popular man.
But, yeah, if you just search Mike Fraser, usually I'll pop up somewhere. And on my website, there's a link. You could send me stuff or my email or whatever, and I answer everything. Eventually, sometimes it's not the same day, but I always get back to anybody. So any questions or got a song you want me to mix or work with you, love to. Yeah, I'll do everything.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, Mike.
Sarah, this has been great. Thank you so much. You're so easy to talk to. I can just go on and on and on.
Well, might just have you back another day and go on and on and on.
Sure, yeah. And thank you for all the help you've given my artists that I've sent your way. Everybody just sings your praises.
Thank you.
Help them so much, and so thank you very much.
I appreciate that. I love working with them.
All right, thank you.